Good morning, everyone. It's an exciting morning to be here, and I'm sure that with all these smiling faces, we're going to accomplish a lot today. And turn your telephones off so we don't disturb the meeting. What timing that was?
That was your reminder to do that.
Yeah. Do we have any printouts or handouts, Madam Clerk, other than what's it?
No, just what's at your slide.
The audience have any?
It's the slideshow. I mean, I can make
Okay.
them, but it's,
All right, so they don't need anything other than that. All right, I don't have an agenda per se here. I do have, the first thing is schedule and process. Mr. Hewitt, do you want to address that?
Is that right? I'll talk from over here if I can.
She introduced herself. She's a new reporter from the Springfield Beacon Bank.
And the winner is, good morning.
Hey, good morning. I think I know everybody here. And if I could just point out, we have a new reporter from the Beacon joining us today. By way of familiarization, this is the formal kickoff to the budget season. And for the benefit of the board or the folks in the audience, a reminder that traditionally this is the mechanism that provides guidance from the board to the staff and the manager to develop a proposed spending plan for the board's consideration. I'm going to talk about the schedule and the process, some of the big projects, variables involved therein, show you a brief treasury report, and then, if I can, turn it over to the board for a discussion, further discussion of goals. As I communicated previously to you, and this is a repeat of the proposed budget schedule, beginning with today's goals and capital programs review on the 22nd of April. And the way that this process should unfold is on the 22nd of April. That's a canal dredging working group. That's a staff canal dredging subdivision coordinated working group that develops the input for the canal dredging program. On the 30th of April, the departments submit their inputs to me. They're working on those now. On the 17th of May, which is hopefully it will be a board meeting, is a revenue review, and specifically two things that I want to mention there are inspections revenues. We're looking at increasing building fees, and also the potential of recalibrating our water rate structure. I don't know how far into the non-consumptive capital fee items that we'll look, but for sure I know that we're looking into some type of increasing block rate structure based on for a consumptive based fee schedule in the water and sewer. The gotta deliver date of 1 June is by law that has to come to the board no later than. And then the next week or so for your consideration as necessary. And plus, from the 10th to the 21st of June. The 21st of June is the regular board meeting and would be when the public hearing on the budget is held. And then again, the budget has to be adopted no later than the 30th of June. That's a mandatory date. looking at, I've got a short list up here in front of you, but as I was looking through it last night, I went, I need to put this on there, I need to put this on there. So I'm going to deviate from that and add to it as I go through it. Of course, we've got a couple of large-scale issues that are coming to a head right in the middle of budget season, namely the Central Reach project, which also coupled with the FEMA Irene Project 559. Just so for the board's information, we have received formal approval on the extension of FEMA 559. I got the paper from FEMA that says it's good to go. And that extension has been granted 15 November through the 1st of April and is, I believe that number is about $459,000 worth. It's what that is worth to us. And again, the idea is what we've been hoping to do all along is to dovetail that FEMA repair project with the Central Reach project or something other that would have come along, and this timing is very fortuitous in what we're trying to put, as we're trying to put all these different elements together. Of course, with the Central Reach project, that's going to require the attainment of financing and the establishment of a municipal service district. There is pending legislation that has the potential to affect how we go about establishing that municipal service district. We're engaged with the legislators, the North Carolina League of Municipalities, communicating with our brother and sister coastal communities and inland communities so that we can ensure our ability to bring this tool to bear on the Central Reach project is not compromised. But I mention it because we've got to stay on top of it, and it's just, you know, it's the circumstance of the realities of the now. You know, we're going to have to stay in on that. I'm alarmed of the timing. I'm not so alarmed at the stuff that I'm seeing, but I just want to make sure that nothing happens untowardly, and we're part of the process. Like we've been able to engage on other legislative matters so that the town's abilities are not compromised. We do have the report drafted for the municipal service district. That will need to come before the board probably after the 1st of July. I'm thinking the August timeframe. We've got a really rough draft of it. We'll finesse that, but we are going to have to go forward with some public notices. There is a process, a very stringent process that's involved with that. Additionally,
David, can you give us just an overview of municipal service district? Because I'm hearing some risk based on some of your statements you just made. So can you just give us an overview of what that is to the town and benefits?
It's a special service district that's established for the purpose of providing services, whatever they may be, whether it's street lights, in our case, beach nourishment, over and above that required by the rest of the town. That's the simple version of it.
Who's providing that? I'm hearing funds, I guess. So where are the funds potentially coming from? The state,
No, the town.
county, the town?
The town.
Okay, well, is it a cooperative or something, or? I'm just looking for a definition for myself and maybe the public on this service district concept.
Let me-
I've read about what you sent us, but I'm still,
Yeah, let me follow up with the technical, the technical verbiage on that, but pretty much it is a district that's carved out and identified. For our cases, it's basically the pledge of collateral for the beach project. It's the simple, way to explain it. The interlocal agreement that goes along with the Central Reach project, the rough draft of that interlocal agreement, we've established or drafted that interlocal agreement. We're still noodling it about with the bond attorney and the financial consultant, and hoping to coordinate that directly with the county manager by the end of this month. The third week of April is what we're hoping to do. And that interlocal agreement is in essence, as Mr. Carter explained it last week, the co-signing of the note for the borrowing of the funds for the Central Reach project.
Do we know if the county is looking favorably on that?
The manager was here, and y'all heard when that question is. I have communicated with Ann, and the dialogue that I've had with her is that she's eager to see what we have. I haven't had anything to tell me no. In fact, this is my impression, that the way that we're going about doing this may become the template for the way that the county does beach nourishment in Brunswick County. You know, it's already something very similar to this is being done up in Dare County and also in Carteret County. Along those lines, the engineer is moving forward. The engineer is moving forward with plans and specs. That's probably a 60-day process. Those specific items are large enough in itself, but they come nowhere near the effort that's involved in getting the easements for the project. There's 450 properties that are going to be in this district that we're talking about, approximately, and all of them are going to have easements required. Now, Noel, the town attorney, is working on that for us. We're going to have to set up an easement mill in order to get them. We've discussed the process by which we're going to administer that, and I believe that she's getting set up to move out with the title work that's required. And when it comes down to the interface for those easements, it's going to happen here at Town Hall. And we've got a process roughly defined that we will communicate when we have it better defined for everyone involved. But I'm probably going to have to bring in some additional administrative help in order to get that done. And that effort is going to probably take, well, it's got to be done before we can go, the LGC is going to approve any financing application. So we're talking the next 120 days through September. Is that 120 days? Maybe 150 days. More to come on that as we fine tune exactly and get ready to start asking people for easements. The terminal groin permitting effort is continuing. The draft inlet management plan has been completed. The final EIS, the comments have been answered from the draft EIS and have been submitted to the Corps of Engineers for their review, and then I believe that the publishing of the final EIS will happen in about 30 days. Once that's published, there will be another opportunity for the public to input their druthers or their impression on the final EIS. And then a record of decision will be forthcoming subsequent to that public input.
David, are you able to predict at all when the final decision might be made and then we are in a position then to have to make a decision?
The CAMA process or CAMA review will come after the record of decision in June-ish. We're told 60 days is what CAMA is telling us after the record of decision from the Corps comes out. The 60 days from CAMA, them issuing a decision, a permit decision. I don't want to be quoted on a 60-day window being told from CAMA. That's what we're told. So we're thinking fall on a permit decision.
But we're talking this fiscal year.
Yes, but again, your permit, when it's issued, has a shelf life.
Right,
And
right.
it doesn't mean that you got to build it this.
No, but we'll have the permit and we'll be able to
You
might
will
make a
be-
decision.
You will be able to make, you will have a decision document ready for your consideration in the fall, is what I'm assuming.
Clarify fiscal year versus calendar year on that.
Thanksgiving? Okay.
This will be next year's fiscal year
Yeah. There is.
and this calendar year.
Right, right.
If you had a permit today, practically speaking, it would be very hard to go to construction in November, which is the turtle window.
Right, right.
Okay. It would just be hard to do that.
So are we more likely looking at next fall?
That's what I'm thinking,
So in the next fiscal year?
the next fiscal year. This time next year, I think is when you're going, is really what you asked me on
Putting
this
into the next
time
year- next year's
on
budget.
Making a decision on whether or not to fund it. And that's if it's not held up by some type of lawsuit. To current services, I'm not going to go through all the functions that the town does, but I did want to mention specifically our solid waste contract. We've had the same solid waste contract for 10, 12 years, and it's just rolled over and rolled over and rolled over. We have talked to Waste Industries and are working toward bringing some type of revision back to the board, but it will be in the January 17 timeframe. As part of that wholesale review, will include recycling as a consideration. We'll make sure that we address how it's done, the logistics, and of course, we'll have to make sure that we factor in, centralized recycling, curbside recycling, all the nuances that go with solid waste. I'm not saying that there is a specific proposal that we're saying have curbside recycling, but as part of that overall review, we will perform that type of analysis to see what it does. It never hurts to rethink the existing service levels.
May I inject a couple of things on that? Those adjustments include possibly prorating the cost to include the new houses that have been built and also fuel cost adjustments, to give you an idea of some of the things we're talking about.
Well, we're looking at, mandatory recycling. What's the,
We're
Change.
gonna do soup to nuts, you know, because that's, I don't think that we can, entertain any type of contractual arrangement without, you know, looking at your status quo, what your arrangement is now, and then seeing what it is on mandatory recycling and how it will be funded. You know, those are a couple of considerations. I'm assuming that the board would want us to look at, and that's what we have intended to do. Now, if you don't want me to do that, save me the time, and I know exactly what to look at. We're just gonna look at fuel and CPI and that kind of stuff. But I think the responsible thing to do is to lay all of those out for the board. You know, in the past, where we've come down to is that curbside recycling, the logistics of it here on the beach, they just don't work because of the weekly changeover. But that's not to say that we can't figure it out between now and then. And also the funding stream on how to pay for that type of service. I do know that the voluntary recycling sign-up is up from about 170 to, I think it was 201 last week. So we've seen about, is that 20% or 18% increase in the voluntary recycling. But again, I just mentioned that as the, you know, that is one of the issues. You will not see it reflected in the budget, but it is one of the considerations that we're going to have to do in the upcoming budget year.
well, just to clarify, Dave, my question wasn't, I wasn't intending to say I'm in favor necessarily of mandatory recycling. I was just asking for clarification. And I would hope that whatever discussions we're having would be looking at no cost increase to the town, given all the challenges we've got this year.
And, you know, our existing agreement, it's just been rolled over and over and over so many times that we need to wipe the table clean and re-rack and stack it. You know, it's like playing a new game of pool to make sure that we're catching everything. Now, solid waste isn't just the stuff that goes in the dumpster and recycling bin. It runs to fall cleanup, limbs, you know, those types of things. So we will look at and address all of the full gamut of solid waste here on the island, which is one of the things that, you know, is real easy to forget about is your yard debris, you know, unless, you know, you got a lot of palm trees in your yard and your landscaper doesn't take them off for you, you know.
David, do we look at the enforcement of the, is it one can for every 2 bedrooms on rental houses? Am I right? I just in my own
And see,
experience in,
that gets into, that's a real good point. When you go to a recycling bin, you know, what is the relative, or what is the relationship to that being a trash can? You know, that's a nuance.
but we have a number of houses that don't comply at all and end up with garbage all over their yard right after the pickup on Saturday morning. And that, obviously, people just aren't doing that. But on the other hand, we had neighbors last week on both sides for 1 week, and the recycle was full after the first week of beer cans. They had a good time, quite no problems at all. But they did recycle, and they filled up that can in 1 week. So recycle is a need, no question, and a great benefit to the rest of the storage of the solid waste. You don't then end up throwing it in with your regular garbage.
Solid waste, the logistics of solid waste are almost as challenging as soup, with all the differing levels of demand here at the beach. Bridgeview Park is moving right along, y'all. That is, there's a number of elements that are coming to fruition right before our eyes on a daily basis. The multipurpose court is in final grading right outside. The guys working on it right now. I believe that we're going to be laying the court surface down next week, and then in a couple of weeks, it's gonna have to season for a couple of weeks. Memorial Day, there should be pickleballs bouncing, basketballs thumping, that kind of thing. Also, just as an aside, down at the Starfish Fire Station, the same guy is gonna renew the basketball goal down there that's put the basketball goal up here. That area gets a lot of play. The modular restroom is supposed to come out of final inspection today with a tentative ship date of Tuesday, delivery and setting date of Thursday. We're trying to coordinate the final logistics on that. The dock out here is in fabrication. All of those things should be in place by Memorial Day. And of course, the DOT bridge project, we met out there on site. That construction was supposed to, or the root matting, that initial kind of thing was supposed to begin on the 4th of April. I hadn't seen anything happening out there, but the contract end date is the 6th of June. We've upheld our end by ordering the utilities, the water, and the lighting infrastructures, and have coordinated that with the contractor. It's not going to be any holdup. It's not our fault if anything happens, and we've coordinated with DOT. So from our side, DOT is good with us. Just a couple more things. The other big project, of course, is the sewer vulnerability assessment that is ongoing. I don't know what the price tag or the final recommendation. The board, that group meets again on the 12th of April. We did get the engineer's structural analysis this morning, and I've sent that on to the group. That will probably, y'all are gonna have to make a decision on that. I don't think, practically speaking, that is going to intersect with the budget process. I don't think that we're gonna be able to hang a price tag on actual remedies to that before the 30th of June. Now, I may be surprised, and y'all may want to make a decision beyond that, but I see that decision happening subsequent to the 30th of June. If there's a desire to accelerate that, the board's going to have to tell us to recalibrate priorities, because there are specific contracting estimates that could have to be made, and that's going to take some time. Again, we just have to see how that comes forward. I don't want to steal the group's thunder, but with the types of engineering potential solutions, it's going to be hard to wrap that up, involve them, and lay it in front of you for a decision before the end of this fiscal year.
So David, are you saying that no funding would be allocated for this budget for that project?
That's what I'm thinking, but.
But would you not think?
I'm not reporting for.
Understand. But would you not think there's at least we know we're going to have to take some action on it? Would you not think that's probably the case?
I'll hang it out there. We're going to have to do something. I don't know. I think that where you're going to end up with is a capital appropriation from the sewer fund balance. I mean, and that's just, it's probably cleaner that way, than trying to incorporate those types of considerations in an operational budget. You know, that's just me speaking as the budget officer representative to the group. And I hope that I'm not stealing Chris's or Mike's thunder there, so.
But it would be, I think we should understand what the sewer fund balance is. And, okay, perfect. Because I know some things that, spare parts and things like that could happen.
I got a slide here.
Okay.
One thing specific, and we haven't gotten down into the dirt with Public Works yet, but Chris has been, I want to go ahead and register the fact that Chris has been having a long-standing issue with a mini excavator, and we're gonna have to make a decision on what we want to do with that. The mini excavator, that's not the backhoe, that's the smaller machine, and just want to register that with y'all as we work, as the staff works through the budget. Speaking of other types of vehicles, I don't see a requirement for any type of vehicle request so far. Just so the board understands, the police department, we're on what I call a lease purchase replacement rotation strategy with that. Wally hadn't communicated, I think we've got one real old one. At the worst case, we would propose to bring one or two. Jeremy, you wanna hang it out there and tell me, are y'all looking at anything? Wally hadn't told me anything yet.
I'm honestly not sure. I know we do have one
That's Jessica's old LTD or Crown Vic.
yes, that one is on its last leg.
Yeah,
And then one of the trucks is a little bit older, but,
okay.
like I said, I'm not sure if he's even planning on replacing it.
What, for the board's use, what that equates to is that, I think it's every 5 years, we roll out and replace one of those vehicles. What it equates to in terms of the lease purchase, the way all of those line up, we buy 2 new vehicles a year, is what that comes out. When you add all the lease payments up, you know, after one vehicle may be in the 3rd year lease and the other one's in the 1st, what it comes out to be is that we buy about 2 vehicles a year. And watch this year.
You mentioned LTD, is that a spare? I don't-
It's Crown Vic.
Yeah, I don't see any, is that still in service?
It's our spare vehicle.
Okay, that's what I figured.
And when any of our vehicles go in the shop, we rotate through that.
Okay, yeah. When you talk about vehicles, I understand the police are loaning the ATV to the folks that are clearing out the main drag here from.
I missed that one.
Trash
That's-
cans.
That has to probably be remedied, right? Okay.
Searching for a solution there. So actually what's happened in the past is back when, we used to read meters on foot, we had 3 of those little buggies, I think we purchased in about 2006 from Tractor Supply. They were the cheaper grade buggy, like $4,500, and I always let her use that, and we don't use them anymore, but they getting some age on them, they get wore, where actually it's a trailer doesn't haul it every week, so I'm actually looking for some different options now. I was thinking about maybe a gas golf cart or maybe even replace it with something just like we had then. But
Yeah, street legal golf cart or something like that.
I do want to register the fact that as part of the DOC program out here, we're investigating, I haven't signed up as a recommendation, possibly establishing a rent-a-wreck program for in case whenever somebody comes out here, ties up, wants to go get groceries at the food line. We're gonna work through that as far as, now that we have the beach butler and those kinds of enterprises in place, whether there's a need for it or not. But that's been something that we've seen at other locations, as we've gone through benchmarking. That won't be part of the budget process per se. It's just something that we're looking at and evaluating.
Would that be to license an outside firm to do that versus we buy them and try to manage it ourselves, or?
Hadn't got that far with it. We're trying to figure out if there's a need for it first. That's it for vehicles. The last thing that I wanted to mention is that information technology, we use a cloud-based system for the execution of all of our programs on a subscription basis, and recently have completed the migration of our servers from Wallace to Plano, Texas. It's a circumstance where the company that was providing us with that service was absorbed by another company. They were bought out. The migration is now final. Everything is up and running. As those things go, sometimes there are hiccups. Nothing is lost. We've managed through it. We're still operational. But what it has served to illustrate for me is we're going to be looking at, in the coming year, no budget implications on what the consequences of bringing that IT infrastructure back in-house would be, what the benefits relative to the risks are by having them somewhere else. I just wanted to let the board know, I was a proponent of, and we've actually one of the first ones to do it in the United States, of using IT cloud services for a local government. But that's when it was just up the road in Wallace. And everything's secure, there's no risk there. But we're going to be reevaluating that posture relative to having a service provider or having it brought back in-house, doing a cost-benefit, risk analysis, that kind of stuff. Just wanted to let y'all know that we're looking at that.
All right, the staff is, or are you going to bring in a consultant, or what level of analysis?
Don't know yet. It's just, as the manager, I'm registering the fact that it's a concern of mine enough that we need to look into it. Okay, that's the projects and variables that we have in front of us. Next slide.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure.
On the, I don't recall in the past when we've done beach nourishment, that we required the easement agreement with the homeowners, so is this different than in the past for some reason?
Yeah.
This is a permit condition that's in there. You got to have the easements of this permit.
Okay, so it's specific to this permit, because a lot of nourishments, we didn't have to do that.
Well, we didn't do it, and we weren't getting financing for it
That's the
either.
difference. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, true to my thing there, this is an eye test chart. This is, I call it the treasury chart, but what this really is, this is your cash and investments levels as of last week, right, Mandy? In
Well, as the end of, sorry, in February.
Okay, yeah, we've just balanced the check, so the most current information that has been reconciled to the check register. In the general fund, that's the blue slice, you've got just shy of $1 million at 0.96, and, excuse me, in the following page that y'all have, there's the actual breakout of those on that map sheet, but I just wanted to do a pie chart to give you a splash pad version of it. So you got just short of $1 million in cash and investments, liquid assets. in the general fund. In the canal dredging fund, it's referenced on your backup sheet there as capital. That's mainly is the canal dredging escrow fund. That's just short of $1.4 million, with the exception of $26,000 of escrow USDA money that we just haven't moved back into the general fund yet. That was the residual debt covenant from last year's refinancing that we will do before the end of the budget year. B part stands right at $7.2 million, and the water fund is right at $5.6 million. And I want to make a difference because y'all have seen a chart that I prepared for you last couple weeks ago on the B part fund. It shows it's about 6.2 million or something like that. Remember, this is as of February, so this is cash. I've got some obligations in there. For example, 5.6 million in water. I'm getting ready to stroke out $2 billion worth of checks to the county and BB&T, so that's going to drop. And also, there's obligations in the B part fund. These are not illustrative of ends of year fund balance levels. This is what you got on hand today. This is just the money in your checking account today, absent what you owe. Okay.
What's the magnitude of the obligations to B part going forward now?
It's only what we've obligated out here, outstanding encumbrances on the Partis grant and the voting infrastructure grant, and
So what's that number roughly?
stand by just a second. Christie, unless you know it off the top of your head.
I think you got 366,744 in department. And
okay, it's 183,000 for the Partis grant, because that number you just told me is the match.
That's
So
right.
the town's obligation is 183. And then Rothschild and Davis, currently encumbered is 132,000. Okay, let me add this up real quick. Town money on the Rothschild Davis part, outstanding obligation is about $120,000. Okay, that's just on the grant. I'm sorry. That's not correct. The Rothschild Davis line is $236,000. Okay? The big grant line is about another $150,000 town obligation. So that's, I gave you three numbers.
Yeah,
250.
okay.
What's that? again?
So we're upward, well, we're around 6.5 million left from what you just told us is encumbered, right?
And just remember, there's a couple of more months, large months of revenue that will come in also. So, you know, it's good. Okay, next slide. This is, and this is a backup slide to the B-Part fund balance over the last 10 years. You can see how the B-Part fund balance available for appropriation has grown. As of 30 June 2015, it was about 6.2 million available for appropriation. Okay. Next slide. And I don't have the same slide for the other funds, to show that the water, the general fund, and the, canal dredging. But
David, is the water include sewer, or the sewer?
yes,
Okay.
when I say water, it's
I'm-
brown
Just
water.
wanted to make sure.
So that's kind of my preamble into, the goals section, which, I teed up hopefully for turning it over to y'all to discuss as you may wish. Again, to go through the schedule, the important things that we have to do is I have to get you a budget message by the 1st of June, and we have to adopt it by the 30th of June. One thing that I'd like to at least get some feedback to y'all, in case I didn't mention it, was that I've developed this using y'all's availability too, and trying to make our, board availability with the things that we have to do and what I think would be beneficial toward, crafting a budget. That doesn't necessarily mean that this is what we have to do, but I would like some feedback, especially in light of the other things that are starting to happen relative to those large projects, so that we can react to them and work for getting a proposed spending plan together. So with that, unless you have any questions, I'll just turn it over to the board.
What's your pleasure?
I'd like to see us set a time for the May 17th meeting. That's a commissioners' meeting day, so that's the third Tuesday of the month. If we're gonna have a
Is it?
special meeting, yes,
Is that, I didn't, okay.
May 17th is the third Tuesday. If we're gonna have a special meeting, I'd like to see us set a time for that, so I can put it in my calendar to know what time we're gonna be.
Heather, do you want to talk to, I'm sorry, ask Heather a question. On the slide, there is also process. Would you, can you talk to, whenever the board established, like we had this special meeting for a budget workshop, do they have to call a special meeting for each of these other ones? Or can they continue the daytime service?
You could
We can-
recess it to a daytime certain.
I'm sorry.
We can recess to a date and time certain in place.
That was what I was getting. So you're not locked into every time that something may come up and say, hey, we want to look at this in a little more detail, can we come back, later on this afternoon, you can recess to reconvene, and, it's like a long meeting. It's a season meeting, if you choose to desire. You don't have to do a meeting every single time. So I think that's important. It's not something that, y'all necessarily got in, your training session, and it's one of the finer nuances of budget workshops. Just so you'll know that. But locking in on a day, time for.
How long is this meeting, do you think it's gonna take? Is it gonna be a 2-hour meeting, a 1-hour meeting?
2 hours. I think for scheduling purposes, 2 hours is fine. If It's been my experience, boards don't
Okay.
like more than 2-hour meetings. I'll take that one on me. We'll schedule 2 hours, and if it only takes 30 minutes, it only takes 30 minutes.
So we don't need to put it at night with our regular meeting, it needs to be separate.
Y'all can
If it's- I think it
that
needs
whole
to be
thing,
separate.
unless it's whatever you want to do, and those dates were dates that were not blacked out by the board when you go to your calendars.
Is that morning at 9 or 10 okay?
What, the 17th?
Yeah.
I need to do it at like 9
Okay.
or 9:15, if I'm do it in the morning.
9 is good.
That's fine.
9?
That's fine. with me. Yep.
9's all right.
That's gonna help a lot as it really heats up on doing these other things for the Central Ridge project. We're gonna be absolutely consumed, up here in the next 60 days with that.
What else do we want to do this morning?
I'm done with mine unless you have further questions. Over to the board as you would see fit.
So just so I understand our process a little bit better, we in a few minutes are just gonna talk about general goals that we feel like the staff should pay close attention to as they're working on the budget. As far as the nitty gritty and looking at it line by line, when do we get to have?
That would be the proposed spending plan,
Uh-huh,
and then you have that. Now,
okay,
what I found that if you give us some pretty good idea
Yeah,
of what's
what we
important
want.
to you, we
Right.
can handle that. We can handle, unless there, of course, are conflicting, perspectives from commissioners, we can normally handle the services, quantifying the desired level of services at the departmental suggested levels. It's only when we have definitive differences of service level provision, and then that normally results in a specific discussion.
So, David, is this the time that we would share with you if we had a desire that you did specific things on the budget?
Within
As-
the letter of the law.
Well, as an example, given what's going on with us and spending everything, I would really like to see the staff come back with a proposed budget that has a reduction from the current year. Having them look at the things of what can we do without, what impact would it have, and to give the board some sort of a perspective on how can we reduce the cost because of all these other things that we have coming at us. And it's just a chance to look to see, is there surplus in there that we can take out?
Here's my comment to that. Why don't y'all tell me what you don't want to do anymore? Because what I found is that the services that are provided in the existing budget is what people want. We're in the service production budget, in the service production business. And it's really pretty simple. Are you talking about cutting costs? Talking about cutting public works? Are we talking about cutting inspections? And inspections is covered by law. So when you break those three things down, just tell me what you don't want to do anymore. Otherwise, I'm chasing shadows, trying to make what service provisions are desired and acceptable by the public, when in effect, everything that we do is important to somebody.
I know it's important, but is there not any opportunity to reduce any costs in any department? Are we absolutely running as slender as we can to get the services done?
You know what, I'm absolutely convinced that we're running what I call a caretaker budget. We're doing, absolutely yeoman's work with, little waste at all.
I want to speak for just a second, if I may, in regards to that. The people that were elected following the year that the previous board voted to build this building and the mainland facility and so forth, that board had to overcome and absorb the cost of all this. So the fat was really, really cut. And then above and beyond that, we had other things that came on board that didn't know about. So sure, there's always something you can cut, but sure, there's always something that's gone up. I would be proud if this board can find any significant discounts. But I personally admire the previous boards that made up for this building and former Commissioner Harrington might be able to help me here, but we had to absorb $600 and some thousand a year just to cover this, our building facilities. And we didn't raise the taxes and so forth, if I remember correctly. So, I mean, it's gonna be a challenge, and of course, the taxpayers look to us to, hopefully cut. But as David mentioned, I think we're pretty much down to what do we no longer want to do. And we do have these major projects we're looking at. So, I don't know, but impress me and show me where there's a lot of money to be found. We all don't want to spend any more than necessary. And all of us taxpayers don't want to pay any more than necessary. But it's going to be a microscopic task to find much, I'm afraid.
And I know where the commissioners are coming from. I know where you're coming from. I briefed to the POA, and y'all were privy to the same, Doug Carter and Associates, at a 9.5-cent tax increase to fund beach nourishment. That's $1 million. Where's it gonna come from? You're not gonna get $1 million out of the budget. It's down to the bone now. There are, if you historically go back and look, we've got the same number of employees that we did 9 years ago.
And
In fact, there's one less.
And we cut the police department
2.
budget by 2 from 10 to 8. I mean, are you gonna go to 7 or something?
Well, the island continues to grow. We've got more building going on. I can tell you this, whenever the department heads give me their budget, Chris, have you ever got everything that you handed me on the sheet?
Yeah, one thing that we need to remember too, I was talking to our building inspector this morning, and we possibly are looking at 50 to 60 new houses existing, which, gives you more tax revenue.
Now,
That's just this calendar year.
now, I can tell you that my intended approach, can you all hear me out there? I'm just about to meander. My intended approach, there are some things that are going to come into play. 9.5-cent tax increase. Well, that's before I've sharpened the pencil on it and taken into consideration what type of inspection fee increases can offset that. What will the increasing block rate structure do to our water revenues? What does the impact of our refinance on the Emergency Operations Center, how will that those, I don't want to use the term surpluses, but decrease, how will they offset this bogey that we have of projected, elsewhere projected of 9.5 cents? Also, in looking specifically at the B-Part fund, we use $500,000 as the contribution for the B-Part fund. I can tell you it's going to be more than that. So I'm not signing up to 9.5 cents, and I'm not going to propose a 9.5 cents. But just watch, I missed the math somewhere. Yeah, I'm not going to propose. I'll tell you that I'm not going to propose 9.5 cents. It will be something there, but what you get from us, it is going to be a skeleton. It will be picked over pretty good. Historically speaking, we've pretty much got the same budget that we've had, other than specific purchases like vehicles. You know, when we've done specific capital purchases, we've pretty much got, in inflationary type things, we've pretty much got the same budget that we've had for several years now.
Since you addressed the vehicle issue, there've been a good number of recent years that we, the town, have been trying to decide, are you better off to lease vehicles or buy vehicles or whatever? And the consensus is that the program we're now operating under is proving to be the most successful. So we have skinned that cat over about 15 years, and we've come up with something that seems that everyone agrees is the best program in regards to vehicles. So.
And that's a lease purchase, 3-year program. And what we do when we own it at the end of 3 years, and then we sell it on Gov Deals. That money becomes revenue recognized in the general fund for reallocation. Now, Wally thinks it costs those for police vehicles, and he sells them, that money gets to go back to the police department, but it goes to the general fund for allocation as the board sees fit. It's, I guess he thinks that if he tells me that enough, that I'll believe it, but if I forget that, don't make it.
And we also have learned that in buying the pickup trucks, we are able to sell them for more and recover more money, so it's much cheaper for the town to have pickup trucks than it is automobiles. Plus, you have the ability to go where you need to go in 4-wheel drive situations that you can't go with the cars, and also with a hurricane, storm threats and so forth, the ability to go places. So.
Have we considered not having every officer have a car, but have a fewer number of cars?
That's an on, or has been a frequent debate and concern, and what happens is that the wear out of the vehicles, and in addition to, you lose time in changeover, because the officer, there's time involved in swapping out vehicles, and those two things operationally are not worth the climb on just having one vehicle.
The town was also advised in an emergency, in a real emergency, for a police officer to go from home to back to the building over there or wherever, switch vehicles or pick up a vehicle, the time lost in that officer trying to get to the emergency is a critical thing to be considered.
The other thing to also remember is they're on call 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Okay, if their wife also works and has the vehicle at work and you call him to come in, he can't come in. He has no vehicle to come in. The vehicle also counts as part of his income. Am I not right, David?
Yep.
That's on his W-2 form, that vehicle counts as part of his pay.
the distance to his home and back.
Yeah, that's the take-home aspect of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Because basically it saves him a lot of money, because he doesn't have to have a second vehicle.
Yeah.
He doesn't have to pay insurance on it, he just drives this vehicle back and forth to work. So he doesn't have to have that second vehicle for his family, to pay insurance on and whatever. And because of that, it counts as,
Yeah, that's standard
Income
for
for him.
anybody that has a vehicle
correct.
supplied to them as part of the work.
As a practical matter, if they have their own vehicles over here, it takes up a parking space.
Well, David, let me make a couple comments here. You know, my experience is, and when I was working with a regulated company where it was similar structure as we have here, where the taxpayers are on the dime for it, is to, those who are preparing a budget were expected to come in with some targets. So have you provided your department heads with specific targets, or are they based on last year's budget?
Don't manage it that way. Just don't manage it that way. I don't manage
Okay.
it that way. I'll tell you how I manage it, is that we know that we spent, or maybe I did, we know that it cost $10,000 last year for fuel, and we don't see any more miles being driven by the cops. And it's, gas is probably gonna go up or down, and we adjust, you know, the gas line item according to that. That's how we do that. But as far as saying, go in and make a 5% reduction and tell me what that is, that's, I just find that to be arbitrary and capricious. Now, if
Well,
you guys
some-
wanna say lower the budget 10%, I'm gonna come back in and say, okay, we're gonna cut functions out instead of making everybody be 10% sick.
Okay, I just made a statement that my experience is those who have responsibility for the budget were expected to come in with justification for what they're spending. I noticed the last year's budget, the general fund revenue amount was what was budgeted. Exactly.
By law, that's the way it's required.
I'm looking at general fund revenues and then what was budgeted. Your budgets, your expenses matched your revenue.
Got to.
It's got to, by
Well,
law.
I understand it's got to match it, but that doesn't mean you can't have allocated funds for contingencies, which is what we are facing right now. These were all budgeted out as expenses with some minor miscellaneous amounts, I mean, 15,000 here or there. So that's where I'm looking at a target for looking at all of your line items by department heads, which are typically the ones who know what they need and where they can, because, see, the other aspect is I'm also accustomed to a periodic, in my former work, monthly department heads came in and presented their budget projections based on actuals versus what you were budgeted. I don't see that happening here, but that's another way of monitoring on a going forward basis how the money's being spent and where you make adjustments. And typically, those adjustments were made where we've realized here was we have a savings, we had some, of course you want to budget for contingencies, but contingencies by definition typically do not come to fruition all the time. So when they don't, that's when you can transfer funds to other areas. But it's that kind of analysis that I think is healthy. And we just had a discussion about the former boards had to come up with the $600,000 savings, if I heard you right, Alan, a year. Well, so that right there demonstrates that there is a way to adjust services or expenses to make up for things that you have to pay for. But what I'm hearing here is that we're at the bare bones and there's nothing else we can do. So, you know, given that you're telling us, well, I don't manage it that way, or I cannot, that's, you said capricious, I think it's responsible to look at your department heads and say, based on what you're spending right now, based on what you're budgeted, where's your performance? So that's my comment there. Last year, you awarded pay increases across the board, right? 5%?
Not across the board.
Okay, what were they? What was
They
the?
varied. They varied. They were budgeted 5%, and they varied on individuals' performance. Some
Okay.
of them got 2, some got 5.
Okay. Did you spend all the 5% that was budgeted? Okay.
But you got to look at the last several years. We had gone, how many years?
And it had varied every year on how that was implemented.
Okay, that's fair. Have you done this comparisons on salaries that we pay here versus similar neighborhoods?
Yes.
And where do we stand on that?
This year, with this year's implementation of this year's budget, it's been normalized, and there is what that analysis revealed, and the salaries were equalized according to what was budgeted for it. What that did illustrate is I actually have one employee who needs to be his job description needs to be revised.
What does that mean? I mean, compared from
He's
salary?
classified as his job, he's not classified in the right job.
Is he getting too much money or not
He's
enough
not
money?
getting enough money.
I think that's what you're asking.
Okay.
To the contingency line, that is actually defined by law. You have to define what you think a contingency line it can exceed. I forget what the percentage of the other portion of the budget is. You just can't say, we think we're gonna have a bad storm and therefore we're gonna put all our funds, say 25% of $1 million in contingency. There is a statutory limitation on contingency, and I could look that up.
So do we budget to that statutory contingency?
No, we do not.
Okay. So there is room there then if we wanted to set aside some funds for sewer vulnerability, for example.
Well, not out of the general funds we can't, but in the operations fund, in the revenue fund, the water fund, you could do that.
Okay.
But you gotta keep in mind that the water fund is a revenue fund, it's a self-supporting fund.
All right.
But
Well,
yes, your logic is good.
Well, speaking of revenues, revenues have certainly gone up this year, given the rate of build, the property values. So what should we expect to see in a budget this year based on the increased revenues? Because, you know, I fully agree, the 9.5 cent tax, there should be ways to offset that. There are ways to offset that with funds that we have. So with the revenues that are going to be we expect to be increased, they already have been, just help me understand how you would factor that into the budgeting process.
Well, making making a correct estimate on, for example, inspections, construction, and what those estimates would be. That's an art form. Yes, we do look at historically what that is, but also I rely heavily at a fundamental level on the Charlotte Schuster Index, which is basically last quarter's, 3 quarters of statistics for Mecklenburg County. That's a nationally recognized estimate, and knowing what's going on here locally is factored into it. I do use a historical estimation. That's an art form in and itself, and you know, that's, Tim gives me his idea on what it is. We've probably actually overestimated in the past on what we thought that the building revenues were gonna be. Tim, you got any idea on what you think?
I'm working on, I am doing a historical, back then on the historical right now, I have the numbers on my desk. I've been working on it for about 2 weeks. I'm also working on my budget numbers at the same time, because we're obviously talking about a fee increase. So I don't have all those tabulated numbers together, but I'm actually trying to come up with an actual revenue projected number. We were short last year. We were over the year before, but we were short every year before that. I'm not projecting that we're going to be making more money than we projected last year. I do remember that from the numbers that I have so far. I think last year was like 161,000 is what we're projecting. I think my number right now is at 154 is what I've got with the numbers.
I can tell you this, budget officers, from what I've seen, they like to toy with boards, and they underestimate, and they're schooled on this, they underestimate what the revenue, they think the revenue is gonna be, and they overestimate what they think the expense is gonna be, so that the board will make sure that they charge enough taxes in order to meet it. I don't play that crap. Okay? Whenever you get an estimate from me, on the revenue side, it's gonna be what I think is gonna be. As a matter of fact, I'm not real comfortable with it because it's my estimate on the revenue side. That you know, if I get the number wrong, you know, there was a tax assessor in a county close by not too many years ago that getting the tax assessor in the county nearby currently when they overestimated some revenue. So I don't know if that answers your question or not, but on estimating those specific revenues that are locally generated, we try to make sure that we take the local conditions, marketplace, interest rates, all those kinds of things to get it as close as we can. Some of the other revenues, the state shared revenues, those are fairly consistent over time, and specifically to the sales tax distribution, you know, there's a different formula now for that. This year is the first year of doing that, and we underestimated on the sales tax for that. One of the things
Well,
that,
I understand the estimation is, it's an art, it's error prone.
if you give them 10%, you're good.
I'm still struggling to understand, where are we today on budget performance for this fiscal year?
Oh, that's the easy one. Let me get you a run. Let me get
Well, I
you a
mean,
run.
where are we roughly? I mean, you probably know roughly. I'm not looking for deep. Are we underspending, overspending?
We cannot overspend by law.
Okay, how much are we underspending that?
In the general fund, we're at 75%.
Versus where you expect to be year to date? or at 75% of your budget? I'm not asking for where you,
We've used 25% of the budget.
You said 25?
I'm sorry, 75.
75, yeah.
We're 75.
And you're what percent to the year? We
Okay,
got
let me
still
put it a different
April,
way.
May, June, 3 more, but you're right on track.
And we have debt service payments that haven't come due yet. So I know where you're going, and you're trying to track linearly with where we're expecting, but you gotta understand the way that we front load some expenses, we back load some expenses.
well, I understand all that, that's all in your projections, and you can,
But we're just talking expenses now.
I'm just talking generally, you have a budget, you budgeted a X amount to spend per month or per wherever, and I'm asking, how are we performing based on those projections?
We're right on target in the general fund.
So you're right at the budget.
In the water fund, we're at 67%. In the canal dredging fund, we're at 0%.
Where do you expect to be then, end of year?
I'll know at the end of the year.
That's not,
I'll know at the end of the year. That's,
well,
I
based on
mean,
what I'm
I
hearing.
don't know how
And-
much.
And Dave, I'm not, I know it sounds like I'm grilling you, but I'm just trying to understand how we are operating the budget, and I'm looking at, what we were given during orientation, and I know you cannot overspend, you cannot budget more than your revenues. So therefore, it appears to me, from a layman's perspective, we're budgeting what our revenues are. And what I'm hearing here is we're spending what our revenues are. We're budgeting and then we're expecting to spend. Is that
Yeah,
right?
That's 100% right.
Pretty
So-
much exactly.
So I'm wondering then, have we gotten so good at budgeting that there's nothing possible to save? Given that we had the history of 600,000 a year saving it, I mean, what's different?
Well, that was by way of cutting services, for example, the number of police officers and stuff like that.
Okay, so
But
this,
the laws are set up so that you pretty much have to budget your income and your expenses to match out to the zero end. Hopefully, you have a little bit left over, but if you do, it's not gonna be much.
Do you remember how
Unless
much?
you cut services or price
Yeah.
of fuel goes down, that kind of thing.
I understand that, but we can still spend it differently if things happen like we're facing right now. These seem to be unprecedented challenges that we've got. And I don't see it coming out of tax increases for everything. And in fact, we're looking at financing debt for Central Reach and possibly Terminal Groin, that we're gonna be budgeting debt service for those. And I'm just concerned about what the future is gonna be for the taxpayers here if we reasonably determine that those are needed expenses. And so, all right, since you asked for specifics, I looked at what we're budgeting here. I have some questions. Group insurance for employees. Is that fully paid by the town? Do the employees share in any of their?
For the employees, it's paid for,
Total.
and there is a family, rocker there, and a portion of that's.
Okay. That's unusual in my experience. That's why I was asking about the salary comparisons, because typically benefits for employees are at least 35% add-on to their salary. if we're paying it fully, then that's probably kicking it up to 40 to 45%. Have we looked at those, has that historically been the case here at Holden Beach, that we pay all?
Not only has it historically been the case at Holden Beach, but it's been the case with comparative governments.
Okay. Well, to me, that's significantly different in the private sector, so that strikes me as different. So that to me is an opportunity. And I know we have employees here listening, and nobody wants to hear about money coming out of their pocket, but those who are responsible for approving budgets are also responsible for looking at how each item is spent. Well, I want to ask about the deductibles and the co-pays, but the private sector is experiencing significant increases in those areas, along with the premiums, as we well know.
And the way that we've managed that over the years is we have increased deductibles, reduced the plan. I believe that our projections this year, recently, are in the 3 to 4% range. Others are in the 20% range.
3 to 4% range of what?
Increase in the premium.
Okay. Well, I'm glad to hear you've looked at those types of things. Is it the 401k employee match, is that what's that, 3%, 6%?
It's up to 5%, depending on what the employee chooses to do. Now, for cops, it's mandatory.
All right, but the plan will match up to 6%? Up to 5, okay. Retirement, what,
That's FICA.
FICA's a separate line
I'm
item.
sorry.
Retirement,
That's the state retirement. State and local government.
state program retirement, okay. Well, for my education, what % of their salary do they retire on, roughly?
As far as the vesting, like at 5 years,
I mean, if you're fully vested, you retire, what's the salary?
30 years is half of your retirement plan.
Okay.
No, let me check, make
All right.
sure on that, but there's a step toward that.
Okay. What's?
And that's administered by the state treasurer, the local government retirement
Okay.
system.
All right. So is that mandatory then? Okay.
You've obviously got a young staff, because when you asked that question, the head was immediately moved.
Nobody wants to admit.
Nobody needs to talk about it yet. We got a few years to go before we do that,
We
right?
have Michael Hamilton in here, he's counting days.
Rewards and wellness program,
Now
that's a
that's an
pretty big line item.
80,000, and that was, normally that line item is like $1,500. That line item represents the 0.7% that the board dedicated to salary adjustments at the budget workshop last year, and that goes to the merit and salary adjustments. That particular line item has not had the funds moved over to its corresponding salary line item. The board.
So it's a year-to-year merit program?
That's a one-time occurrence.
Okay.
That what happened there was the board said, last year they said 0.7% sent that toward an equalization and merit program, administer it, and that was done in session, and that's where that 0.7 was stuck, because I could, at that particular, it was a matter of administrative convenience. At that point in time, I didn't have a chance to go in and say, okay, 5% goes into cops, 5% goes, we will do that before the end of the year.
So that 80,000 is going, going to be recurring in each budget, but in different places? Is it what you're saying?
Generally speaking, yes.
Okay.
So, but the money was allocated already, right?
The money has been allocated through the merit system or
Right.
an evaluation. It just hasn't been moved out of that line.
So
Yeah,
those
we'll
are-
see that as part of the future salaries, right?
Yes.
That's their new salary, so
It'll
we're,
be embedded in a new salary.
Okay.
Okay, and overtime, each department budgets overtime.
I have a question regarding overtime, if you, can I interrupt?
Sure, sure. I don't mean to be.
Well, you're on a roll there, I didn't want to interrupt. I think we're generally, you know, there's tight staff, but police overtime, for example, doing things a little bit differently. I know a lot of, Ocean Isle has a fairly large part-time police force that are seasonal. I'd like to understand if that would relieve the impact on overtime in the police department.
Let me speak to that, if I may. The police department, through the years, has looked at alternatives, and the police department that we've had through the years has traditionally been underpaid compared to the rest of the county. And the police officers look forward to an opportunity to pick up some extra money by way of overtime. And the other side of the coin is to have people that are working here all the time, they know all the nuances of the town, all the streets of the town, all the regulations of the town. And what we experienced through the years is if you hire somebody part-time coming in from wherever, or some, they don't know all the rules and regulations, and a lot of misinformation is given out, and a lot of liabilities and so forth and so on, which Chief Lane can explain in more depth, but it looks good on the surface to bring somebody in, but if the dollars wash out pretty much the same, you know, we through the years, in conjunction with the police chief's request, we've been operating with the overtime.
So I have two comments about that. I think we've corrected with that $80,000, corrected most of the salary. We made salary adjustments, and I saw a lot of it go into the police force, which was a good thing. So they're up to where they should be, is my understanding. And I guess we're smarter than everybody else because I see most people have part-time police force. Ocean Isle has a very, very large part-time police force that I'd like to understand what is positive.
Ocean Isle pays for a whole bunch of their costs with their occupancy tax money. But therein lies the benefit of having a federal project that you don't have to pay for all your sand with occupancy tax. I mean, that's the short.
Yeah, I would like to satisfy my curiosity and I think others' curiosity about the overtime. I think whether that could pay for or more than pay for, I think we owe it before we go with a large tax increase to go through some of these exercises. Not that we're going to do cuts, but let's look at some ways we can do business differently and learn from other people how they're doing business differently. And we probably went through this exercise a while ago, but I think before we come forward with a 9.5, I'll use 9.5, I know it's not going to be 9.5 cents increase, but we owe it to ourselves and to everyone to run through those exercises and make that decision in the current environment.
One thing I would like to add, Ocean Isle does do everything she said, but they also have a base number of policemen that's higher than ours as well. So their police budget, you know, we talking about wanting to cut, well, we've got 8 people, we've got 8 policemen. Ocean Isle's got X, and then they got these.
No, I didn't say anything about cutting. I don't want to cut.
Yeah.
I believe 8 are bare bones. I'm talking about relieving them from overtime, that since they got a pay increase last year, they don't have to do the overtime and be stressed out during the summer, and bringing in some part-time, just beach patrol, or, I'm not an expert. I'd like to hear,
It's,
with a new, we pumped in some new money for the salaries, so I'd like to readdress that and get some new ideas. From them, not me. I'm not the police expert. And that's just one example. I think you did, I had notes, the water fund, we talked about, the water. I think that's a great idea, have a graduated water revenue. For another example, how is the police administrative staff working out? I think that's an expense. I don't know that was an ongoing expense. Was that always an ongoing expense? We were going to continually have an administrative staff for the police department. I'd also like to revisit the vehicles. I listened to your argument. Some of it makes sense. Some of it, I don't know. We don't have police force that live on the island, so they have to travel by where the vehicles are parked on their way here anyway. But I'd still like to, I think it's worth revisiting some of these things, just so we make sure that we are satisfied and everyone else is satisfied with the current environment before we ask for a 9.5 cents tax increase. That's why in my note, and I actually did my homework, David, so I sent you the, just go to the different departments. I don't want to say cuts, but really how to trim and how to do things differently. And I fully appreciate that we are not overstaffed. Definitely, that's my feeling. Go ahead, Chris.
I trimmed mine about 2 years ago, when the police department staff there that we funded, that's what we done left. As far as the employee was, I shaved mine about as thin as I can be shaved. I only got 6 employees, counting myself.
Yep.
The service that we offer there, I can look, but I tell you, it's pretty slim. We do have a benefit package here that it's hard for me that as a supervisor, vacation time that they accumulate or whatever, you can't have it like 240 hours of the year that you can carry over. And with the small amount of employees I got, it's hard for me to even let people use their accumulated time. That's all I got on that nutshell.
Did you say they can carry over 240?
You can't carry over
More
6 weeks, 6 weeks of vacation.
hours per year, or, you could lose it. But I got, it's hard for me to let them use the benefits that we offer now, because I'm pretty thin. I'm understaffed with what we got, and ours seems to be getting bigger every year.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Chris. I'm not looking, I don't think we're overstaffed, not in the least. But I'd still, and another revenue issue, another revenue potential is parking fees. A lot of islands charge parking fees. Have we looked into that?
We have not looked into it, as a revenue source. The only parking that we've looked at is really, our on-street parking. It's not been looked at as a revenue source. That's something that could be looked at, but for part of the budget, I think it lies outside of
Yeah.
it. That would be a.
Future.
That would be let's put it on
Yep.
the work list as a board initiative to look at that.
Because even in the last few years, I mean, your description of the county, I think the county now is saying, we're not going to give you any revenue, but we're going to co-sign for you. It seems like that's the attitude now. And that wasn't a couple years ago. 10 years ago, the federal government was fully involved, right? Now they're washing their hands. So
They're wanting
we're
us
on
to
our
give
own.
them money.
We're on our own now. It's a brave new world.
Yeah.
It's a brave new world, and we still got to maintain and manage this beach. So we have to really look at things differently.
A friend of mine described it as that the beach managers have the privilege of running the equivalent of a state park without
Support.
without funding.
Right.
I mean, we try.
So that's where I think of, I know parking, so since we're not getting any funded from the county or the state or the federal government, how do we relieve that lack of funding from people who come onto the island and don't pay that 9.5 cents? That we're gonna increase that, everybody who is on this island to move sand. So that's,
David, I applaud you for looking at fee structure for inspections, and we talked about the water rate restructuring during our orientation. What time frame are you operating under if you elected to recommend a water rate restructuring?
I'd say do it the 1st of July, right, with the new year.
Okay.
Was where I'm going in.
Are you working on?
Unless, Margaret, do you know of any prohibition for that? Because, I understand would try to predicate those new revenues into the budget, incorporate those new revenues into the budget. That's what I would be attempting to do.
David, my years run together, but was it last year that we raised the fees, or the year before?
We haven't raised inspection fees in a
We added
decade.
the fee based on the state's requirements that no fire inspections have ever been done here. So we added that fee, and we actually added some fees that were being charged that weren't in the fee schedule, that they were just assumed as being fees. We haven't raised the fees, we haven't changed that fee schedule.
And
You're talking about inspections?
We did raise,
My other question is primarily around the water restructuring that, you showed us our neighboring communities.
Yeah.
That's a significant opportunity,
Yeah.
and it's based on consumption, which also reinforces conservation.
and it's a usage fee, right?
So you're working on that proposal?
What we
Bring to
have
the board.
done is, basically, we've just been passing on the county's wholesale increase each year to the customer. Matter of fact, I think the next water and sewer users group meeting is next week, and normally, we get from Julie what the anticipated increase is. And they usually tracks pretty good, but what we're talking about is different from that.
Yeah, we're talking
Yeah.
about a rate structure that increases the rate per unit based on consumption,
Right. And
which I'm hearing is also beyond just the use of the water being an impact, it's impacting our sewer system. So it's something that we'd be responsible to.
in addition to the consumptive side of that, we're also looking at the fees that go along with the different types of taps. To look and see how that compares to other places. Now, that's almost a construction-related item, but we don't compare with what other places charge there either. Now, the one unknown variable there is, and it could be good or it could be bad, is when you charge more for more in an increasing block rate structure, you don't know what the conservation side of that is going to yield in terms of consumption, so you gotta make sure you hit the consumptive piece of it right in making the estimate, so we're sensitive to that.
Yeah. But it certainly would be better than having nothing there, right?
Well, if nothing else, it'll hopefully help get folks' attention that have the hose run from their oceanfront house down to the baby's pool on the beach in the summertime, and they just leave the water on all day long,
Yeah.
kind of thing, and you run 20,000 gallons of water out there in no time.
Just to be clear, the questions we're asking are just things to consider, and I'm just recalling when we added the water meter remote monitoring feature. That was using technology appropriately. It saved us labor. It saved us expense. You know, those are the types of things that well-performing organizations are expected to do on an ongoing basis. And that's why we're asking the questions here, is unless you're asking, it's a healthy pressure for cost control. Because unfortunately, money is like, it's one of those things that nature abhors a vacuum, and if you got X amount of money, unless there's some kind of pressure against spending it, it's gonna get spent. All right.
I think just in general, if, you know, you're hearing, I think from many of us, the nervousness of terminal growing and beach nourishment and sewer, and I don't know, if what you come back with us, if you could kind of give us a general idea of how we're gonna pay for those with what we have. And I know that's upcoming, but I'm a little nervous that we don't have enough for when the time comes. And I know that we're not gonna owe for terminal growing all at one time. So maybe even a projection of several years where that money's coming from in the current budget that we have. Now, I know it won't be in the next physical budget that you give to us, but just maybe to the side, you know, this much of B part we intend to spend in these 5 years. You know, just a general idea, because I'm nervous.
I hear, and what I'm hearing is exactly what I need to
Okay.
hear. I get it.
Okay.
Well, maybe not all of it, but
Yeah.
I think I hear exactly, I'm getting what I need.
Okay.
I do have one final question, Dave, just make sure I understand what budget message do means. That you refer to,
Did I spell it D-O?
no, I'm just, what does that mean, budget message?
I gotta give you a product for consideration by that day.
So that is the date where you're gonna present your proposed budget?
I gotta give it to you, the board, by that day.
That's what you described as proposed spending plan? You talked about a proposed spending plan.
Yes.
Is that's it?
That's
Okay,
proposed spending.
okay, great, thanks.
Which will also have your revenue estimates?
Yes, got to.
Okay.
David, have we a anticipated retirement date for the chief?
Not that I'm aware of. He hasn't shared one with me.
And is that his decision, or is it unlimited? Could he be 100 years old and still be the chief,
He could-
making $200,000 a
David
year?
can retire him any day.
But is that normal? I mean, I'm thinking his salary is pretty close to the sheriff of the county.
No.
No?
Dude, what? No,
It's not?
no.
I thought I saw the sheriff's salary being around 90,000 or something like that.
Well, he doesn't make 90,000.
Nobody makes 80, right? Pretty close to 80? Upper 70, 77, 78. And if it tracks age, that's about his age, so if he gets to 100, he's gonna be 100. But there's no anticipated, no, okay, I'm looking at
He has not shared anything.
what we would do with that money to get to, other officers. I just was curious if he had announced already, or, okay.
What else do you, ladies and gentlemen, like to do today? Madam Clerk, do you know of anything that we need to do that we haven't done?
No, sir.
Mr. Hewitt, do you know of anything?
No, just thanks to the board. I find this very helpful, to get some druthers from your perspective, and especially expressing what your areas of interest are. It helps to
refine my effort and also the staff, so thanks a lot. I find it very helpful.
Would you commissioners like to open the floor to any, there's one
Yes,
right there.
yes, sure.
Mr. Harrington would,
David alluded earlier to some things going on at the state legislature that would have some form of an impact on us. Can you expand on that a little? I'm not aware.
Just in,
I haven't shared with you, David, Senator Rabin, that's a correspondence into me, that I haven't shared with you, some stuff up to date that you don't know about yet, about the municipal districts is what he's talking about, I'm sure if you want to cover
yeah,
that.
what, the municipal service district, is a special service district area, and the way that it's created, the way that it's established, evidently there's a senator from Greensboro, there are a variety of reasons to establish a municipal service district. The number one reason is beach nourishment, and there's a host of reasons, downtown development authorities, special sidewalk districts, just a host of things. And the senator from Greensboro basically doesn't like the downtown, the way that the downtown district in Greensboro has been handled, and is looking at refining how districts are used, established, set up, and that kind of thing. So what I've seen come out of that committee's efforts is nothing that, at this point in time, would preclude us from setting one up in sync with our effort on the Central Reach project. But when those things, in my experience, when those things get in front and it's a special interest item and it's established because somebody didn't like a light pole configuration, that the potential for things to adversely impact other places are heightened, and we're just making sure that that doesn't occur. Is all. I don't know if that answers you. I hadn't seen anything that bothers me real bad yet, but we just want to make sure that we're tuned in on it and nothing. And if we have an opportunity to ensure that that doesn't happen, that we use everything that we have to protect the goose that laid the golden egg. Is that, not knowing what Mayor Holden got, but.
It's just an update of what's going on, nothing's been finalized. Anyone else in the audience? Anyone else up here? Is there a motion we adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
No, we're adjourning to reconvene.
Oh, that's right. No, we're gonna recess.
You could do it either way, all I have to do is advertise it if you adjourn.
But if we recess now, we don't have to go
Then
through
I
all
don't
that.
have to do anything, completely up to you guys.
So we've recessed, what was it, 17th
9 AM?
at 9 a.m. in this facility, at this room. All
Thank
right.
you very much.
We have a motion, we have a
Um,
second?
Yeah, we had a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. It's